Welcome back. This is episode 13 of the Heated Exchange, brought to you by Blitz League. Jett, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Happy to be here as always. Excited for another episode coming off the Halloween weekend that I'm sure a lot of you out there were celebrating the holiday, trick-or-treating with your family. But yeah, football on Halloween as well. So it's definitely
trick-or-treating?
I'm
How old are you?
I'm talking to our audience, Austin.
How old are you again? I guess you never.
I'm 20. I'm 20. Yeah, I got a lot of candies. I went to some of the big houses, like the mansions, and got the full size chocolate bars. So
clearly I could tell.
But yeah, it was good. I hope Austin's trick or treating went good as well. Episode number 13. We have another great show planned for you. Lucky number 13. We're gonna get into the Blitz League. We have a lot to talk about there, as we have some teams rising up the ranks and teams falling down the ranks, such as Austin's team. Then we will get into the big injury news surrounding Derrick Henry. He is now expected to miss most likely the remainder of the fantasy playoff season. He could return in potentially week 16 or week 17, but we'll get into that as well. Then we're now 8 weeks into the NFL season. We're going to give some midseason fantasy awards out. We're going to talk about our MVP, waiver wire, most improved, steal of the draft, booms and busts. And then we are going to look into the pick'em. We started the last week for the first time. Austin and I went through each of the games in week number 8. We will let you know who came out on top and what to expect from this contest going forward. Austin, you ready to get into it?
Always. Let's do it.
All right, let's first talk about the Blitz League. Currently, right now, in first place in Division 1 is David Connors with a record of 4-4, and in Division 2, the leader with a record of 5-3 is Ashton Moore. In Division 1, it's a little bit more weaker, I think. We have 3 teams with a record of 4-4, a team with a record of 3-5, and a team with a record of 2-6. When we're looking at Austin, myself's division, we have 4 teams at 5-3. I am 3-5, but I am on the rise. You can laugh all you want, Austin. I'm on a 2-game winning streak. My team is finally coming to form. All the deals that I have been making are starting to pay off. And the only goal that I have right now, I don't care if I make the playoffs, is just to beat you the next time I play you and finish as well with a better record than you. Only 2 games behind you now, so I'm liking where I'm standing right now.
I just think it's funny that we're all of us are 5-3 here. You're the one outlier. It really doesn't surprise me. I don't know why I'm laughing.
Why doesn't it surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me.
No, why? Why doesn't it surprise you?
Because it's you.
You think
like,
so? You think...
When you ever good at fantasy football? Well,
here's the thing though. So
even though somehow you beat me head to head every year for some reason, but still.
I mean, it's obviously telling, honestly, like who's the better fantasy manager. I mean, there's no luck involved in our matchups. Come on.
The person that has a better record, better manager. And that's typically me.
I mean, we could look overall in my home league, and I could tell you as the better overall record. I mean, it's me, but I mean that's.
And how many championships has that accounted for again?
It's for one in back in the day, 2013.
Oh, when it didn't matter.
It mattered to the people that were in the league. I know you weren't a part of it, but it was definitely
to the very few people in that league. Yeah,
very few people it mattered to, but.
I'm sure.
But we're talking about now. We're not talking about the past. Your championships in the past. We're talking about now, and we're talking about
my championship's coming up soon again.
Really?
My championship's coming again.
Okay. I like the confidence, but no one has ever repeated. I know we're getting off topic talking about my league.
A little off topic.
But yeah, no one has repeated it in that league. So the odds are against you, but Yeah, you definitely have a good chance. But why don't you talk a little bit about your team in the Blitz League, how they've been doing?
Not so well lately. I'm on a 2-game skid. Obviously, 2 weeks ago,
Expected.
2 weeks ago I really messed up. I forgot to take out Shepard, which cost me my win. But again, I had to eat it. Last week, I mean, I lost by 3. My team really, I mean, nobody performed. Kyler Murray's been struggling. Jalen Hurts, I mean, decided to be giving finally because Thanksgiving's coming up. He tried to give all his touchdowns to his running backs instead of taking it himself or throwing it. So very selfless of him, but selfish for me, my team. Travis Kelce has been, I mean, I don't even know what he's doing right now. He has been like a completely different person lately, and we should definitely get into that at some point.
Yeah, no, let's talk about that now really quick because yes, Travis Kelce has not really been himself, but he is still the number 1 ranked tight end in fantasy right now with 127 points. The second best tight end is Mark Andrews at 110. He has played 1 less game than Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce, he did start the season on a high note, 3 consecutive games with 15 plus points, but these last 2 games have been below 15 points. A lot of it could be attributed to him that the age is finally catching up with him. Patrick Mahomes has not looked like himself. The Chiefs are also using more tight ends. They're also spreading the ball around a little bit more. Austin, what do you think this is attributed to?
I mean, I think you hit on every nail right there. I think it's a combination of everything, but mainly I think the Chiefs are a little dysfunctional right now. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I think I pin the most blame on Mahomes. He has not looked himself really for majority of the season. Last night, very disappointing loss for my Giants, but I gotta say, the Giants played as well as they could, considering they had nobody in the offense. And the Chiefs probably played as bad as they could, considering the Giants had nobody in their offense. So I don't know what it is right now. Mahomes is not himself, whether it's the play calling or really it's just Mahomes kind of losing his touch. But right now, Travis Kelce's in trouble.
Is he someone you think we should be buying low on, or are you worried about him and trying to just sell him based off of name value right now?
I'm actually worried about him. I think he'll have a couple of good games, definitely to end the year, but this is different. Travis Kelce's not getting the targets anymore. It'd be different if Mahomes was trying to feed him the ball and just wasn't clicking. That's something I noticed, and that's when I'd buy low on him. But he's not even getting the targets really as much as we would like to see him get. But
well, the thing is though, he still does lead all tight ends in targets, and it's not like
I know he does.
He hasn't had a game, I believe, under 5 targets so far this year.
It's not what we're used to with him.
It's not the same kind of targets, I think is what you're trying to say.
When we think of Travis Kelce, in the past, we have not compared him to the tight ends. We have compared him to wide receiver ones.
Right.
We are used to him getting wide receiver 1 targets, not tight end 1 targets. He's just a tight end 1 at this point. And that is not the first round ADP that people had him in this year. So right now, I'll be worried about him because if you spend a first round pick on him, you're in trouble right now.
So I have a question for you. So when we get to the end of the year, right now we're midway through the year and Travis Kelce still has the edge over the rest of the tight end position. But of these 3 names, who do you think finishes as the tight end 1 overall? Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, or Kyle Pitts?
Mark Andrews. I think Andrews has been the most consistent tight end out of all 3 of those guys so far. He has been Lamar Jackson's favorite target, and especially as of late, Andrews has been finding the end zone a lot more. Jackson's been hitting him a lot more in stride over the seams, and his production has not fallen off. Whether he finds the end zone every week, I don't know, but his targets and volume has pretty much remained the same. Travis Kelce right now has been very down lately, and doesn't look like it's going up because they're not feeding him the ball as much as they used to.
I still think Travis Kelce will finish as the number one overall tight end for, I believe, it would be the sixth straight year. A lot of Mark Andrews' fantasy output is propelled by that big 42-point outing back in week 5.
But you also look at Kelce, his first couple of weeks, he had 2 really huge games, and then all of a sudden he fell off. So, I mean, you can argue the same thing with Kelce.
Yeah, Mark Andrews has had definitely a more consistent floor. He's only had 2 games under 10 points. Travis Kelce, he's also had 2 games under 10 points. Obviously, they're still both great tight ends, and regardless, for the time being, you're still going to both start them every week, but we'll just have to see. Obviously, I could potentially seek out a trade, try and trade Travis Kelce based off his name value alone. For me, I would actually consider buying low on him. I think this is going to be as bad as it gets. I have total trust in Patrick Mahomes that he will figure it out. While it's not looking good so far, I'm still not giving up hope just yet.
Listen, I can't argue that. Travis Kelce has been the best tight end in the league for the last 6 years, like you just said, but he's not getting the same volume as we've seen in the past, and that's what scares me.
No, so, I totally get it. I really do, and we'll just have to see what we can get from him going forward. But let's go into our next topic of conversation. Derrick Henry, who was literally lighting the world on fire the first 7-8 weeks of the NFL season, now is expected to miss potentially between 6 and 10 weeks. 6 on the more aggressive side, 10 being the more conservative side. But still, you're most likely not going to have him for the remainder of the fantasy season. You could potentially see him return for championship weekend, which is, I believe, week 17. Before Derrick Henry went down to injury, he was the number 1 running back by over 40 plus points. Second being Austin Ekeler at 153. Derrick Henry had 193.3. He had the most rushing attempts by almost over 100. Next being Joe Mixon with 137. Derrick Henry at 219. He was literally in the MVP conversation in the NFL, and just literally he was unstoppable. Unfortunately, nobody in the NFL is invincible. Before this, Derrick Henry had only missed 2 games in his career. Obviously, it's possible the workload has begun to catch up to him. But Austin, what's your initial reaction to when you found out about Derrick Henry going to miss a good portion of the remainder of the season?
First off, prayers up to Derrick Henry. I wish him a very speedy but also healthy recovery. He has been prime example of monster running back on football the last few years. He has been a fantasy god. Can't tackle him, can't bring him down. He runs through every defense. So first off, for the Titans, I think it's going to affect them for a little while. But and this is where fantasy comes into play. I believe Henry going down, it's going to have to force Tannehill to start making plays instead of being a game manager. Mike Vrabel is going to have to start calling up more pass plays. And I have to believe that this is going to be time for A.J. Brown, even though he's been lighting it up lately for sure. But this is a time where Julio Jones needs to just come out of his shell and just start lighting it up and show us why Tennessee went out and got him from Atlanta for all those picks. So I think Tennessee receivers are going to have to step up. Whether they do, that'll really be on Tannehill if he can get them the ball. But I expect both receivers for Tennessee and even the tight ends, even some of the running backs, McNichols, I'm expecting everyone to get a little more pass work.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that we're going to have to see the Titans adjust to is they lived so much off of that play action game, especially Ryan Tannehill. He made so many big plays from that play action game. Obviously, Jeremy McNichols is no Derrick Henry. They do now have also Adrian Peterson. They just signed a few days ago. I think it's going to be the initial couple of weeks, it's going to be definitely a tough adjustment, but I do think Ryan Tannehill has the ability to become less of a game manager and become more aggressive. He does have 2 really good wide receivers. We'll have to see how this running game takes shape. But also my question to you, that I'm sure there's a lot of fantasy owners that had Derrick Henry, and I'm sure they were at the top of their league, if not top 2, top 3, top 4. What do you advise them to do going forward? I know everyone's situation is different, but what do you think is the best course of action?
If you have good enough replacements at the running back position, I would not waste your time going after Adrian Peterson. I don't think look, he's old. He's been on a lot of teams since departing from Minnesota for a reason. He's basically been a journeyman since then. He doesn't have the same boost anymore, doesn't have the same power anymore, strength anymore. Just, it happens when you get old. I wouldn't waste your time picking him up. I think he'll be nothing more than a flex starter. And the only way he really finds his way into an RB2 radar is if he just finds the end zone multiple times. But other than that, they're not going to give him the full workload that, we've seen AP do back in the day for sure. So I wouldn't waste your time. But if you're desperate, you don't have any running backs left, you kind of went all in on Derrick Henry and built around him at the receiver and tight end position. Either trade your other talent for a running back or, maybe try going after AP at that point.
Yeah, like I said, it really all depends on your situation. If you're very deep at the wide receiver position and now you have a big hole, now that Derrick Henry is no longer there, that would be the best course of action, to trade one of those wide receivers for a running back. Obviously, you can pick up someone like Jeremy McNichols or Adrian Peterson and hope for the best. That's why, like, a lot of people like us who play fantasy football stress the importance of having a ton of running back depth. Yep. I was talking to someone today that was in one of my classes that plays fantasy football. He's in a keeper league and he has Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. And then he just decided that he was not going to draft another running back until Melvin Gordon. Obviously, that situation has backfired. So I think it's a learning lesson for pretty much everyone. That I get it. When you see that you have someone like Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey, you think, oh, I don't really have to worry about my running back position for a while now. But the running back position is the most fragile position in the NFL, and you're going to see injuries to big name players every single year. That's why it's best to be prepared before situations like this happen. Obviously, no one can predict who it's going to be, but it's definitely a lesson to be learned, I think, in this situation.
Now, my question is, how the hell did he get McCaffrey and Henry? How the hell do you get that?
I think in this league, keepers don't apply to what round they were drafted in. So he kept McCaffrey, but then he drafted Derrick Henry in the first round this year.
And Henry wasn't kept?
I guess not.
Wow. Okay.
That's a whole nother story, because
we're getting off. I'm getting off topic.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. That's not just me, right? It's not just me.
It is not just you. Okay, I gave him a look when he said those exact words to me. How the hell do you have Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey on the same team?
Yeah, that's just absurd. But anyway, overall, obviously, I'm sure you feel the same way. Hope Derrick Henry has a good recovery, and we hope he's back on the field soon. He is prime time must-watch TV. So good luck, Derrick Henry. We're with you, man. Stay strong.
And in the end, it's bigger than fantasy. Obviously, these guys put their bodies on the line each and every week. And we take it for granted that they're just putting up numbers on our fantasy teams, but it's a lot more than that. Yeah.
For people. Never want to see a guy get hurt.
No. Absolutely. And let's now ready to move on to our mid-season award ceremony.
I'm ready.
All right, Austin, I'll have you start off right here. We're going to start off with a pretty big award, the fantasy mid-season MVP. Who do you have?
This is probably a no-brainer to a lot of you, but it's Cooper Kupp. This guy has been a fantasy monster this season. Back when Jett and I argued Cooper Kupp versus Robert Woods,
yes.
Jett did argue Cooper Kupp, and I know he does not disagree with me on this. He did not think Cooper Kupp would do anything like this. No one did. He's a wide receiver 1 right now in the league. He has 63 receptions, which is second to Tyreek Hill, who had a whopping 18. He has 64 receptions right now. I think he had 11 catches last night or 12 catches last night. Cooper Kupp's the league leader in yards. with 924. He leads second place Deebo Samuel by over 100 right now. He's a league leader in touchdowns. He's tied for first in targets with Tyreek Hill, who had 18 targets last night. And Cooper Kupp had an ADP of wide receiver 18, I believe, heading into the season. I mean, he's an ADP of 18, and he's wide receiver 1, and he could be due for a 2,000-yard season right now. So, I mean, it is a no-brainer. It's not even close.
Yeah, I mean, besides him probably being the MVP of this,
Derrick
not probably, most definitely being the MVP. Before I get into mine, I just want to talk a little about Cooper Kupp. Obviously, he was probably one of the biggest steals in drafts, considering where most people got him as well. Obviously, I had Cooper Kupp ranked a few spots ahead of Robert Woods, but I wasn't expecting, a top 5 finish was like it's happened before with Cooper Kupp, but to be the number 1 overall wide receiver when you have so much talent at the position, it's definitely pretty remarkable. And he's already setting records. Cooper Kupp became the first player in the Super Bowl era with 900 plus receiving yards and 10 plus receiving touchdowns in the first 8 games of the season, and is also on an historical pace with over 1,900 yards. That would potentially tie Calvin Johnson's single season record. It is definitely going to be a tough pace to keep up, but with the way Cooper Kupp is being used on this Rams offense, it is definitely not out of the possibility at all.
Absolutely.
But for me, obviously, Cooper Kupp would be my answer too, but a guy that we just mentioned, Derrick Henry, could potentially be in this conversation as well. But I'm going to take a different direction here. I'm going to go to the QB position, the number 1 QB in fantasy. Not many people expected him to be the number 1 QB in fantasy right now. Tom Brady currently is the number 1 QB in fantasy. He leads the position by over 20 plus points. He has 25 touchdowns and 5 interceptions and the most passing yards in the league by over 200 yards. He's been remarkable this year. He's had 6 top 5 QB finishes on the year. His lowest outing on the season is 11 points. He has so many weapons to work with. He was probably drafted in the later rounds in most leagues, could have went undrafted in some leagues, but he's definitely exceeded expectations, and he's definitely on the way to leading fantasy teams to championships this year.
I can't argue saying Tom Brady. I mean, he's been incredible this season, but the only argument I'll say with that is that I expected Tom Brady to be a top 10 quarterback this year. Obviously, I didn't expect him to be number 1, but I had him ranked in my top 10 heading this year. So I completely understand where you're coming from. And I'm sure obviously I know you probably didn't want to go the obvious answer of Cooper Kupp, but
oh yeah, I definitely agree with you that the clear, it's not even close, the clear MVP is Cooper Kupp. I think Derrick Henry,
I would have put Derrick Henry above Tom Brady, if anything. Obviously it sucks now that he's hurt, but
yeah,
I think right now he's been you could argue he's been the MVP of the first 8 weeks of the season.
Oh yeah, I think Kupp, Henry, Brady are probably the front runners, I think, because they all are the top of their respective positions. But yeah, they're definitely helping a lot of fantasy teams out right now, including yours. So
including mine, absolutely.
But what's the next award you want to touch on?
I want to go to the most improved player this year. So first off, Jett, do you have a candidate for that?
I'm trying to think. There's a few guys out there. I want to hear what you have to say first, because I don't want to take your guy. But who do you think?
So my most improved player this year, also in the wide receiver position, Deebo Samuel.
Exactly. That's exactly what I would say. Yes.
Deebo had an ADP of the wide receiver 36 heading to the season PPR formats. He's currently the wide receiver 4. He finished off his rookie campaign in 2019 as a wide receiver 26. This year, he is second in yards with 819. He is top 15 in receptions with 44, 6th in targets with 72. He already has more touchdowns this year with 4 than he had in his rookie season, which was 3. And I don't count last year because he only played 7 games. so far this year, he has not scored single digits in any week. I think the worst game he had was about 10.1. And not to mention, he has more yards through his first 7 games this year than he did in his complete rookie season. He had 802 yards in 2019. He has 819 right now. I mean, he's a lock and load wide receiver 1 every single week because of volume alone. I mean, it's like 2 different worlds right now he's living in. It's not even close. And it's like same thing with Kupp. I did not expect Deebo Samuel to be like this, especially, with Kupp, you can make the argument because he had Stafford. But, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo throwing the ball. I mean, listen, no disrespect to Jimmy G, but he's no Matthew Stafford. So for Deebo Samuel to be putting up these kind of numbers, that is remarkable. So good for him. I'm happy for the guy, but easily my most improved.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few guys that I'm looking at right now that you can argue can be, especially in the wide receiver position.
Yep.
But the guy that I'll mention really quickly is
let me guess. Michael Pittman.
He was one of the guys that I was thinking of, but the guy that I'm going to go to is actually on one of my teams as well, Mike Williams.
Yeah,
yeah. So this has been his breakout year. It's been 5 years before we've seen something like this, but he is currently, while he has struggled these past 2 games, it could be due to a little bit of an injury, but he's still the wide receiver 16 on the year. He's on pace to break his career high in receptions, targets, yards, touchdowns. He's been a target monster, and Justin Herbert has looked at him plenty throughout the season. You can argue he's also one of the steals of the draft, as well as someone like Deebo Samuel. Many people got him in the double-digit rounds, and he has really shown that when he was drafted, a lot of people expected what we're seeing now. Obviously, it took a while for it to formulate into what we're seeing. He's really no longer just a deep threat. He can be a possession receiver, and he can still catch balls through the deep ball. But yeah, Mike Williams has definitely showed that he belongs in this league based off of where he was drafted.
Can't argue with that. Mike Williams has been a revelation this year. But to be honest, I expected him to be a lot better with obviously new coaching staff, bringing in Joe Lombardi. They said they're going to start using him like a Michael Thomas, and they certainly have delivered on that. But even with that being said, I didn't expect Mike Williams to be putting up these kind of numbers. Obviously, the last couple of weeks he's played have just been down weeks, but could be for injury reasons. The Chargers are, struggling on offense a little bit everywhere. But besides the last couple of weeks, Mike Williams has been terrific. So I can't argue with that.
Yeah, the next award that I want to touch on is our midseason waiver wire player of the year. Yes, there's a few candidates, but for me, there's one name that sticks out above the rest, and that is Cordarrelle Patterson.
Yep.
He's been in the league since 2013, and we have never seen a season like this from him yet. Obviously, he's with the Atlanta Falcons right now, playing as that wide receiver / running back role that he is accustomed to. But when we saw him have a few good games to start the season, people were really skeptical if Cordarrelle Patterson was going to be able to continue this, just based off of his past seasons and him not being able to be relevant in either fantasy or be productive on an NFL field. Obviously, everyone who thought that, including myself, is wrong. He is currently the RB8 in PPR formats. He is a weapon out of the backfield, through the air, and on the ground. And he has really been, besides Kyle Pitts, the focal point of this Atlanta Falcons offense. And a lot of people thought that Mike Davis would be the guy in this backfield, and it really has turned out not to be. Cordarrelle Patterson is finding the end zone a bunch. He currently has 7 touchdowns on the year. And for everyone that picked him up early in the season, you are definitely reaping the benefits now, because he is unstoppable, and it doesn't look like he's going to be slowed down anytime this season.
That's the one guy I thought of for sure. But I guess another guy right off the top of my head, tight end in the league who has finally come on strong. Did not expect this from him this year. Obviously, he has not put up the numbers Patterson has, but for a tight end, he has been terrific. I've been very high on, and I've even talked about a little bit on the show. Mike Gesicki. He has been terrific this season. Last week, I think about 9 points last week. But also the Bills are one of the best defenses in the league right now, so no one plays well against them. But other than that, Gesicki's been one of Tua's favorite targets. He's been putting up 18, 19, 20, 15. Like he has been terrific so far. Volume driven. He's targeted a lot right now in the red zone and even in the end zone. And except for Devontae Parker and or I guess Waddle, it's been Gesicki. He's been consistent. So if you pick them up, you are probably reaping the benefits as well right now.
Yeah,
so,
and basically, yeah, he was really dropped after that first week where he had 0 points on 3 targets, followed by a 7-point outing in week 2. But ever since that, he has only had 1 game under 10 or 2 games under 10 points. He has been one of the top tight ends in not only fantasy, but in real life as well. He's currently the tight end 4. And I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon. And I know Austin's going to enjoy his presence on his fantasy team.
Absolutely. I love this guy. I love me some Gesicki.
All right. What's the next award you want to touch on?
I would like to do Rookie of the Year so far. So I want to hear you first. Who was your Rookie of the Year so far?
I feel like we may have a similar answer, but for me,
I don't think so, actually.
Say that again.
I don't think so.
Okay, I mean this one is pretty close to home for me. He has been a mainstay in my fantasy team for my home league, and that guy is Ja'Marr Chase. He's currently the wide receiver 3 in PPR formats after all the issues about drops and whatnot in the preseason. He has not had an issue with drops at all for the most part throughout this season. He has yet to have a game under 10 points. He also has 4 20-plus point outings, and he has elevated himself up into Joe Burrow's number 1 target on the Cincinnati Bengals offense. Obviously, he's T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are still there, but he has become the target monster that people expected him to be, not maybe in year 1, but down the road. He has obviously exceeded his draft position by a lot, and is going to be probably within the first several rounds of drafts next year, and he is by far my Rookie of the Year.
See, that's the obvious answer, and again, I really have no arguments. He has been electric so far, but the guy I'm thinking of who has really flown under the radar because he's just not been as explosive and out there like Ja'Marr Chase, as you see on like Sports Center and House of Highlights and Bleacher Report every week. Najee Harris. Really, like I said, flown under the radar. He's right now RB6. He's averaging 20.3 points per game, which is, I think, is a little more than Ja'Marr Chase is averaging right now. And not only is Harris doing that, but he's doing it on a terrible Steelers line with a quarterback who, like, that a statue is more mobile than. He's right now 5th in rushing attempts. He's 12th in rushing yards with 479. He's 37 catches for 273 yards. He's getting the volume through the air and the ground. He's a 3-down back. I mean, he's a workhorse. And he has been so good this year in PPR leagues. So I don't expect that to stop because they know the only way they're going to win these games is they got to feed him the ball. He makes plays happen, especially with no Juju anymore. I mean, they're going to have to keep using Najee like a receiver to make up for it. So right now it's Najee. My eyes.
Yeah, he's like, now that I'm thinking about it, he has definitely flown under the radar for sure. Obviously with guys like Ja'Marr Chase making all these highlight plays,
right? You see it all.
Harris has been quietly productive every single game, except after week 1, he hasn't had a game under 19 points. That's pretty remarkable considering he's also a rookie. But yeah, he's definitely going to be a fantasy superstar for the remainder of his career as well.
100%. And then a couple more awards I want to go through, and we can make these quick.
Yep.
Jett, who was your biggest surprise boom this year and biggest surprise bust this year?
I think you'll probably agree with me for the bust part of this. I think it has to be Allen Robinson. He has just not been what we've seen from him in the past. Obviously, Allen Robinson is no stranger to having poor quarterback play in the past, but this year is just different. He has not even been Justin Fields' favorite target. Hasn't found he's found the end zone once this year, and that was only a 10-point outing back in week 2. He hasn't had a double-digit outing since week 2. He was drafted in the second, third round in most fantasy leagues, and he has been by far, I think, the biggest fantasy bust to date. Other pending injuries as well. Obviously, there's a lot of guys that are injured that can be classified as bust, but I think non-injury guys, Allen Robinson's up there.
And your biggest surprise boom player for the year, who's that been?
It's a tough one because there's a lot of guys that are deserving of this award here, but I'm gonna take another guy on one of my fantasy teams this year.
You said Michael Pittman.
I'm not gonna say Michael Pittman. I'm going to say
okay, good.
Jalen Hurts. A lot of people were very skeptical of him coming into the season just because of him not being as proficient as a passer when you're looking at a lot of the quarterbacks around the league. But prior to this week, Jalen Hurts had not had a performance worse than a QB1 outing. Obviously, he has been remarkable. He's currently the QB4 overall on the year with 185.9 fantasy points. He's had a ton of production on the ground, and he's been serviceable through the air. But I know, like, for example, in my home league, Jalen Hurts was drafted in the 16th round. He was drafted towards the bottom of the draft in many leagues, and he has become a mainstay in many fantasy lineups as a solid QB going forward for the rest of the year.
I like that. I'm actually one of those people who did not think Hurts would be this good. I thought he'd be a very good quarterback because of the threat of him throwing the ball and running, but to be this productive, did not see that coming, especially since Philly, and no disrespect to Devonta Smith, but they don't have any real pass catchers. I guess Dallas Goedert, but they don't have really any explosive pass catchers. So giving Jalen Hurts a lot of credit. He's had a huge responsibility this year. He's delivered. But my surprise boom of the year has been Michael Pittman. I was hoping you wouldn't say him because I was. He is right now wide receiver 11. He's 9th in yards with 594. He's 11th in receptions with 45. He's averaging 16.2, and he's come on very strong the last 3 out of 4 weeks. He's averaged 24 points in those 3 great games. He has taken over as not only the wide receiver 1 on the Colts, but he is a confident wide receiver 1 in the NFL. He is right up there right now with all the other wide receiver 1s. He is a big, physical, strong receiver and a very good route runner with great hands. So I did not expect him to be this good this year. I thought he would get better from last year. He showed a lot of promise, but he has taken a huge stride in 2021, and I don't expect that to stop. So he is my big boom so far this season. And then finally, my bust, obviously, yes, Allen Robinson's the obvious choice, but I'm going to go a different route. I'm going DeAndre Hopkins.
Wow.
Hopkins, I had him ranked as, I believe, my wide receiver 2 heading into the season. And I get it. It's not because Hopkins, just like Allen Robinson, it's really not his fault per se. Kyler Murray's also been hurt, which sucks, but it's mainly been the fact that the Cardinals haven't needed to target Hopkins at all, or as much, I should say. They are splitting the ball around to everybody. And I just did not think Hopkins would be a culprit of that. I thought he would still get his targets. I thought he'd still get his receptions. I thought the offense would run through him this year, like it did last year when they were putting up a gazillion points a game. But he is really disappointed, and he's officially a wide receiver 2. In my eyes, he is not a wide receiver 1 anymore. Not even a low end. He's a wide receiver 2 right now until further notice.
I definitely agree that yes, DeAndre Hopkins has not met expectations. He is currently the wide receiver 14 on the year. Obviously, he was drafted in the top 3, top 4 among wide receivers. But I think actually even a bigger bust than DeAndre Hopkins is Stephon Diggs, who's ranked
No,
as he's ranked as the wide receiver 22. Obviously, yes,
no, no. He's still consistent every week. He's still doing what he does every week. He hasn't had a 25-point game really because just like the Cardinals, the Josh Allen hasn't running the ball around, but Diggs is still getting more consistent play. Hopkins just had a couple huge games. But other than that, Diggs has been much more consistent.
Diggs has had consistently average performances. Here's the list of his wide receiver finishes over the first 7 weeks of play: 29, 27, 36, 16, 48, 7, 23. For someone that was looking for a top 3 wide receiver when you drafted him, he has definitely not met expectations. And while he shouldn't be classified as a full-blown bust yet, he is definitely on that route. Obviously, I don't expect him to go on that route the remainder of the year, but looking at it at the midsection of this season, he's definitely a case for him to be a partial bust, I think.
I'm just saying Hopkins.
I know you have a thing for Stephon Diggs after what he did for you last year, but
look, listen, he is, in my opinion, one of the most talented receivers in the league. Pure skill, but in terms of fantasy production, yes, I wish he was doing a little better, but Hopkins has been the biggest disappointment in my eyes because he has still not had the volume. But that's my case. That's my story. I'm going with it. Mic drop. Yeah.
All right. The mic did drop, and we are going to move on to our next segment. We're going to talk about our NFL Pick'em challenge that we started last week, and Austin was going off about, I'm gonna, outperform you. I know how to pick games better than you, this and that. And yet I just stood back and let my picks speak for themselves. And I did outperform Austin this past week. I finished with a record of 10-5, and Austin finished with a record of 8-7. Some of the notable games that Austin got correct that I did not get correct: he picked the Patriots to upset the Chargers on the road. And some of the games that I picked that Austin did not get correct: I picked the Titans to beat the Colts, I picked the Cowboys to beat the Vikings, and I picked the Chiefs to beat Austin's beloved Giants. Austin, what are your thoughts on the first week that we did of the NFL Pick'em?
Obviously, it didn't work out, but in hindsight, I'm really not upset with my picks. The Colts had that game. They had it the whole time. They really choked. And the Giants game, again, they played so well considering they had no one on offense. They were an offsides penalty away from probably kicking a game-winning field goal last night. So, it didn't work out, but I was pretty damn close on those games. But Jett, I give you credit. You picked the right ones last week. You know what? Short memory. Got to move on. Wise words of Ted Lasso. If you've seen that show, gotta be a goldfish. Short memory. They have the shortest memory. They're always happy. So moving on to next week.
Yeah, we're not going to go through the whole week 9 schedule and pick games, but Austin, I don't know if you have the schedule in front of you, but I think what we should do is just come up with an upset of the week that we both have, and we will get an extra point if we do get that game correct. I'll go ahead and pick my game first. So the Titans are playing the Rams on Sunday Night Football this weekend, and now obviously the Titans are going to be without Derrick Henry in this one. The Rams are 7.5 favorites at home, but I am going to take the Titans on the road in an upset in this one. Yes, I mentioned before that the Titans may look a little bit rusty without Derrick Henry, trying to get their footing without him and trying to deal without their perennial running back in the fold. But
come on,
I really like Ryan Tannehill's chances to be able to keep up with the Rams offense. Yes, the Rams just acquired Von Miller in a trade. We're yet to see if he's going to be able to suit up for that game. But I just think that this is the type of game where everyone expects the Titans to lose just because Derrick Henry is not going to be playing. But the Titans have played a lot better ever since they started off the season very slowly. So give me this upset of the week and give me that extra point.
All right. Well, if we can go with that, I'm stuck between two games right now.
What are the games?
And I don't know which one to go to. So I'm going to give my two upsets, but then I'm going to give you the one that I actually think that I'm counting towards my pick 'em. My first upset, and I'm going with them again, my New York Giants. 2.5 right now. I'm just looking at ESPN. 2.5-point underdogs against the Raiders. Giants are at home, coming off a tough loss, but the Giants, in my opinion, obviously I know it doesn't count in standings, but I think last night was honestly a moral victory for the Giants. They played as hard and as well as they could, considering the circumstances. Really, all of their offensive lines hurt. Losing Shepard mid-game, no Saquon, no Galladay. They just lost their safety. Oh my God, whose name lose me at the moment. But they lost by 3 to last year's Super Bowl contender. So I think they're gonna come back against the Raiders this week and take care of business at home. My other upset I'm thinking of is taking the Bears to upset Pittsburgh on Monday Night Football in Pittsburgh. Justin Fields for the first time looked like a real quarterback last week. And the difference was they actually let him run. They set him free last week. Steelers do not look that good right now. I really thought a bye week could help them beat the Browns. They look like the same Steelers team. The Browns are just a sorry team right now. But I think the Bears, I think they feel a little confident after last week's performance, even though they lost ultimately. But the Niners are a much better team than Pittsburgh, in my opinion. But if I'm really going with one team, sorry, Jett, New York Giants, go Big Blue. Give me that extra point, baby.
First of all, let's talk about the Steelers here. You just said that the Steelers have not looked great, and these past several games that they've played, their defense has looked a lot better. Obviously, they have gotten a lot healthier. Their offense, even though Big Ben is not the same quarterback that he was, they still have plenty of weapons. And in regards to the Bears, Matt Nagy was not coaching that game. That's the reason why they let Justin Fields run loose.
And you know what? Maybe seeing how well they did last week, you have to think. Listen, Nagy's got to be smart, right? He has to be a reasonably smart guy. He's an NFL coach. You have to think he has some sort of brain cells. So you think to himself, our offense actually looks better when Fields is, let loose. You have to think it. But again, I'm not taking the Bears because I'm going with my New York Giants, go Big Blue. Getting in that dub column next week. The Raiders I believe they're coming off a bye week.
Yes.
They're coming off a bye week. They may be a little rusty after the bye. The Giants are coming off, even though they lost a well-fought or hard-fought game, well played. They should be feeling really good about themselves, really proud of themselves, and I think they'll take care of business at home. Give me that extra point.
All right, before we get out of here, now that we are midway through the season, currently the QB1 is Tom Brady, like we mentioned. The RB1 is Derrick Henry, like we mentioned. Wide receiver 1, Cooper Kupp. Tight end 1, Travis Kelce. Obviously, the most likely of those to change is the Derrick Henry, not going to be that RB1. So, Austin, my question to you before we get out of here, who will finish as the RB1 now?
You know who I'm thinking of. His name is Austin Daddy Ekeler. That bad, bald-headed man he is. He will finish as RB1 this season. Derrick Henry was the only thing standing in his way. And obviously, so sorry, Derrick Henry. Obviously, like I said, I want you to get better. But you were the only thing standing in this man's way. Pound for pound. That's Austin Ekeler. And he's coming. He's about to take that title. He is volume-driven. The Chargers are using him so efficiently and so well. So, yeah, this is a no-brainer for me. It's Austin Ekeler.
Yeah, Austin Ekeler is definitely a great choice, but I'm going to take a little bit of a different route here. I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor, who's currently the RB3 on the year. Ever since he got off to a slow start in the beginning of the season, everyone was panicking a little bit because he wasn't finding the end zone. Ever since week 3, he has found the end zone at least once in the last 5 games, he has had some monster performances. He hasn't finished no worse than an RB10 throughout this span. Obviously, you can't get wrong with someone like Austin Ekeler, but just looking at Jonathan Taylor's remaining schedule, I just think it's a lot more favorable. He plays teams like the Raiders, Jaguars, Jets, the Texans. I mean, those are all teams that have not been able to stop the run so far this year. Obviously, if you have Ekeler or Taylor on your team, they're most likely both going to finish in the top 3, top 5, but it's just a matter of who claims that number 1 overall spot.
Again, can't argue that. And one more thing before I let you go. Tom Brady right now the number 1 quarterback fantasy. Do you think he sustains it?
I feel like we had this conversation. I think it was like quarter way through the season. And I was like, no way Tom Brady finishes in the top 5 or even, but now that we're saying that he is in the top quarterback right now, I just don't see anybody stopping him or coming up from behind and taking that number 1 title from him. He's just looked too good, and age is clearly not a factor. And it does have a pretty sizable margin over Josh Allen right now. So,
Yeah, no, I would have to agree with that. I think Brady, unless something drastic happens, I think Brady's going to take this. He's been unstoppable.
Yeah, we'll have to check back on this when we do our end of the season award ceremonies, where we'll highlight obviously all the same awards, see if anything has changed, and see where everybody has finished. Episode number 13, that is a wrap. It was another good one. We hope you enjoyed. We hope we got you more informed on the game of fantasy football for not only this week, but the weeks ahead. We're getting closer and closer to a lot of leagues' trade deadline. We're going to be talking about some trade deadline candidates on the next episode because we want to get those teams finalized and prepared for the stretch run. And obviously the ultimate goal is to win a fantasy championship. Austin, anything to add?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Yeah, man, look, I guess as usual, we're here for you. Check out blitzlytics.com as usual. Me and Jett and the rest of the team, we're all posting articles every week to help you win your fantasy season. And other than that, and this time I'll say it, can't handle the heat, Jett Rosenstein.
Austin
Get out of the kitchen, Jett
Austin
Rosenstein.
Geller.
No, it's always you. But,
all right, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.